Hey, this is Notser, and we're looking at the French cruisers. I just want to really define what the French cruisers are. I've been playing a ton of them in the last 2 days. Obviously, I don't know as much as I should, but I have a very good idea of exactly what's going on. And I want to talk about what could be improved to make them play more enjoyably. So, the French cruiser line. It is a cruiser line that has the jeez. Been playing way too much World of Warcraft. It has the consumable speed boost. This is familiar to destroyer captains, and it does exactly what you expect it to do. It improves the top speed of the ship. 8 to 10%. Now, in my opinion, if this is a trait and not some afterthought, it sort of feels like an afterthought on a destroyer. Smoke feels like the primary trait of a destroyer, in my opinion. It can't be this crappy. Speed boost actually has to boost the speed of the ship. I'm talking real speed boost, getting into the high 35, 36, 37, 38, 39 knot range while it's on. So you can benefit from the agility that it gives you, the harder it's harder to hit a shot on a target that's moving fast, and also to get around the map. Maybe even 40 knots if I'm really going to be honest. It needs to provide me something different. And it just doesn't. It gives me like 2 knots. Big deal. Whoa! 2 knots. Let's stop the presses on that one. 2 knots. Oh, and also, please don't swap the positions of speed boost and heal. You've done it like 3 or 4 times. I really would prefer it if it just stayed in the same location. Thank you. Thank you. So, speed boost, it's an interesting trait, but it's not powerful enough to be a main trait to go along with radar, hydro, smoke, all those skills. You can't compare them. They're way more impactful than this speed boost. So you need to boost the speed of the speed boost whenever it's on. I think it would play a lot better. I don't think people would complain. How dare you give them speed? Also, the French, they're very nimble. Very nimble. I felt this Benson was going to drop his torpedoes. I hadn't confirmed it. He didn't fire at me, and sure enough, that's exactly what he did. But I was easily able to avoid out of the way, except for the single launch torpedo on the front of the nose. And it does a significant amount of damage to me. Accidentally put on defensive fire. And Notser, if you would have used your hydroacoustic, you wouldn't need defensive fire. You would have seen it. Yeah, I know. And then when I swap that out, oh, here, cue the Citadel. Yeah, did you see where that shell went? Right under the front 2 guns. That is the universal weak point of every French cruiser. If you fire under the guns, you will Citadel them. Guaranteed. Guaranteed. So, buckle up. This is part of the reason why people are frustrated. Oh, by the way, I'm using inertia fuse high explosive in this game. And you know why? Because I have a theory. I think that the penetration force of these shells is underrepresented or underpowered or bugged or misaligned, misentered. Something about it is really fishy. So, we've got a line that has a trait that's mediocre at best. We have a line that is very maneuverable, which I really appreciate, but it has no armor whatsoever. So it relies on maneuverability to avoid shots and range. And if I ever move into range, I'm punished. I'm fine with that. I don't have a problem with that. That feels great. That feels absolutely acceptable. But I don't do any damage for this risk. This is probably the second weakest armored, most vulnerable cruiser line in the game, next to the British. And I tried a game, I really tried playing the Minotaur with just radar and not smoke. No. No. You need smoke. You need smoke. The armor's just not there. You can't afford to take any damage. And their heal gives them like 75% of their health back. So, for as vulnerable as these ships are, their guns need to perform better. This 240mm gun fits in where you would expect. It feels like Wargaming don't want you to benefit from the size of the caliber. It's more about where they put that particular ship line in their grand scheme. So you're not getting a shell that does way more damage or anything like that. You're getting a shell that just continues the process. Okay, well, what am I continuing? I'm continuing a low penetration force, a high failure to pen or failure to do any damage shell, and it hurts. It really hurts your damage output, which it should. Even with inertia fuse high explosive, a significant amount of my shells just fail to do any damage. That's just the truth. And that's really sucky, right? The velocity, yes, it's not as fast as others, but it gets the target. You know, we hit 8 of our 9 shells. 8 of the 9, that's pretty good. Accurate guns for sure. It feels like they have great grouping, but they just don't do any damage. I've got to compensate by picking a skill that honestly you would never take on a 203mm gun or anything like that, just to get the shells to do damage more than exploding on contact and not doing it, you know, failing to do any whatever. What is it, shattering on the hull? So, I mean, I love the accuracy. Don't get me wrong. Accurate guns, well placed. All 9 hit the target, only did 4,000. I think that Wargaming are concerned about accuracy. So what they did is they decided to take away their accuracy, not take away their accuracy, take away their effective shell penetration force. I mean, these shells have to be right with the Germans on their the number that just failed to do anything. And that's really hurting their bottom line. The torpedoes are a nice bonus, but they are not actually usable in combat, not like the Japanese. You've only got 3 torpedoes on each side of the ship. You barely have to angle to use them, but you only have 3 torpedoes, a single launcher per side. You can't bait out the enemy to change their angle. You can't do anything like that. You have to hope that they'll just maintain their direction and one of the 3 torpedoes will hit, or all 3. I felt like I was going to have to deal with a Japanese battleship over here, and I know he's going to fire at the Iowa. Oh, that's great. Oh yeah, that's really great. So, long-range gun support, average velocity, better than some, worse than others. It's right in the middle. The damage output per shell, again, very average. Better than some, worse than others. And yes, it is true. The ZAL has more damage, HE damage, per shell than this one. 240. 203s. I think the ZAL... Doesn't the ZAL have 8? 16? Does the ZAL have 16 guns? It's got 4. Oh yeah, there's another Citadel. He Citadel'd the back gun. But, yeah, Wargaming doesn't care about gun caliber. They take a design and they put it in. So they wanted this to have average velocity, probably very accurate guns, and very vulnerable to fire. So you wanted to be back, at the very back, if possible. That's how you avoid shells. This Alabama who fired on me, this Critter 8, the way I was supposed to, in Wargaming's mind, is use my distance and maneuverability to avoid it. That's fine, but I can't do any damage. So when I do make a mistake, I'm not feeling like, well, at least I did 100,000. 100, I was well on my way to doing the highest damage game I've ever done. And I've played this ship probably 10 times. I've played it. And this is with inertia fuse high explosive. So inertia fuse high explosive has fixed the issue, I think, in my opinion. I don't believe that it's supposed to work like that. I don't believe that the shells are such a shatter potential that I would have to use inertia fuse just to get over that. And I was talking about this. Sometimes Wargaming likes to balance ships before they're out around the existence of skills. You could see this in a lot of the ships when advanced firing training increased your range, or you could even see it for the Japanese destroyers. They were so afraid of stealth fire that they didn't give you the range you deserved. So you had to basically take advanced firing training to get to the range you wanted. One great example is the Akizuki. The Akizuki basically got the exact same range as it would with advanced firing training in 0.6.3 without it. So they basically buffed it to what they expected it to be, and they were so afraid of the stealth fire potential that they wanted to limit that window as much as possible. So they undervalued the range on all the Japanese destroyers because advanced firing training exists. Notser, they're going to take advanced firing training. What is the worst thing that could happen? Well, the worst thing that could happen is they're completely useless and nobody plays them. That's sort of what it feels like right now. The shells fail to do so much damage that they feel completely useless. I can't shoot my way out of a dangerous scenario, and that is very depressing as a cruiser, as a class that has no armor, and the king of the class with no armor, the French cruiser line. I should be able to shoot my way out of a problem. I will die so fast, but I should be able to shoot my way out of a problem, and you can't do that right now. You can't shoot your way out of a problem. I can't speed boost out. I can't do anything to get out of this problem. Now, some of you are going, oh, well, you're using HE. Try that AP, my friend. So, speaking of trying the AP, this is AP on a broadside battleship. It's going to be a very accurate shot. It's going to be the most ideal shot you could expect from these guns. And we're going to see how much damage we do. 9 shells on the target. How much should we do? 6,200 damage is the maximum damage on the main guns. And we do 7,300. 3 pin, 1 shatters, and 2 overpin. Okay. We switch to HE. Same scenario, right? How could we possibly match that damage output? It's almost double the expected damage. And with HE inertia fuse, we do 8,600. Just straight up better. Straight up better. And without inertia fuse, it would probably have been right in that alley where it's supposed to. Maybe 4,000 to 5,000. The cynical person in me, believes that inertia fuse was considered in balance for the French cruiser line. And I don't think that's fair, because no other cruiser line had that consideration going into it. Wargaming, I really love you guys, but you can't keep doing this, especially when you've taken out a stealth fire. You can't keep balancing a ship around the usage of certain skills. I'm sorry, you just can't do that. Especially inertia fuse, because it didn't exist for 90% of World Warships. You have to just let it exist. Let them make their shells extremely potent. Don't shortchange them a base version where they have to use inertia fuse just to be effective. This is probably the highest damage per minute I've had in any game, and it's with inertia fuse high explosive. It feels like it's a necessary skill because so many shells shatter on the target. I don't care about the velocity. I don't care about the gun range. Honestly, I don't really care about the rate of fire. The rate of fire is a little slow, but if the damage per shot and the accuracy were a little bit more consistent, I'm fine with it. It's around the Japanese. The Japanese feel fine. They don't feel like they're completely worthless with their rate of fire, right? It's the shell characteristic that's probably the issue. So wargaming, I think you should make the shells a little bit more potent so there's a failure to damage less often. That's the number one change. And it's not the number one change, but it's an important change. I think the number one change you need to do is you need to make speed boost actually a trait worthy of having. You don't want to make it just a mediocre skill that you just press all the time. There's no consideration for it because it doesn't really give you that oomph that you need in that moment. Make it give it a big oomph. Like dangerously big oomph. That's how you need to do it, because that's what radar does for the Americans and the Soviet ships. That's what smoke does for the British cruisers. That's what hydroacoustic does for the Germans. But the Germans have to deal with, should I take this or defensive fire? Are there aircraft carriers? That sort of thing. But these are very impactful. You know, hydroacoustic for the battleship, the German battleships, feels very, very much a very impactful skill that you'll notice. Same with the German destroyers. I just don't think that speed boost has to be mediocre. I mean, what's the worst thing that could happen? They move to the front too fast? They move to the back too fast? They're too hard to hit? What is it? They need to be hard to hit. They've got probably the most obvious weakness of any cruiser line in the game. Just shoot under the guns. You'll citadel them every shot. That's a pretty big vulnerability. So, I really like the potential. I like the potential of an extremely fast, long-range, agile ship line that can speed boost out of a bad situation or into a combat scenario. I think that sounds like it'll work really well. I just don't think the guns match up to the archetype yet. Can they? Absolutely. They don't do it right now. They don't do it right now. So that's my sort of discussion on the French cruiser line. And they all feel like this. You know, the Tier 9 actually feels better than the Tier 10. They've made so many concessions for the 240 and the 203, just as right there, great armor damage, great HE damage, good rate of fire. I think I can get it down to like 9, 8 or 9, 8 or 10. That's roughly where it sits. That's pretty competitive. It's got like 3 or 4 kilometers on the Baltimore, and I think the Baltimore has a rate of fire of like 8, I want to say. 7, 6 with the rate of fire. Somewhere in that realm. Feels just fine, right? Feels good. But the Tier 10, 17-second reload before you use the rate of fire. That's pretty substantial. That's a pretty substantial rate of fire. You've got to really consider where you're shooting. And I'm just not getting the shell damage that it deserves, quite frankly. But I'm having fun. I like the style. I would like to see a more extreme push in the style. I am one of those people that prefers that it feels really strong to play, but there is always a counter, and the counter to this is a great big battleship shell. It really is. I hope this was interesting. I hope that we can find out some more tricks, maybe, and maybe Wargaming are going to address the issues that they see when they talk to you guys, or talk to me, or talk to anyone else. I hope you have a fantastic day, and I'll catch you next time.